We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrificed?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex People! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey, Trent. Oh, so no Trent. That's right, folks. It's going to be another Parth-only intro and outro for this episode, but don't worry. I'm going to do my very best to make up for our lack of a co-host. But yet again, you're going to have to just hear what I've been eating most recently, and that would be a 6-pack of microwavable dumplings that my parents occasionally get from Costco. They're very yummy, especially when you get home and you're very hungry and don't have the mental facilities to put something together to eat. I barely have the mental facilities to record this podcast right now, but we gotta do what we gotta do. You know what I mean? And sometimes you just gotta cue the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week, we're talking about Eyes Wide Shut. That's right, folks. It's our first Kubrick, and we are talking with Tom Cruise's hairstylist, Kerry Warn. He was also the hairstylist on the movie as a whole. This is a cool interview. It's also part one of 2-part interview. Kerry was a super cool guy, very British man, and he talks with us a lot about, how he got involved in the fashion industry, how he got involved with Stanley Kubrick. He was ready to leave movie making until he gets a call from Mr. Kubrick, and then sticks around in the industry pretty much ever since. It's a very cool first part, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So without further ado, I guess there's no need to delay this any further. Let's just cue the interview. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Kerry Warn. He's worked on such films as Mission Impossible 2, The Great Gatsby, Blade Runner 2049, and our film for today, Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
So just to start off, what would you say your relationship with film was like at a young age?
All right. I used to go to the cinema with my parents when I was a kid. I think I'm youngest of 6, and I think it keeps us all quiet. And I was exposed to a lot of Hollywood movies as a child, which I didn't think really affected me until later life. And then when I got into the business and it all made sense, I thought people just naturally looked like they did on screen without any hair, makeup, or costumes, or lighting, or direction. I just thought that's the way they were as a young child. And then I got wise, I guess.
Awesome. And so obviously you ended up working in the hair department. Can you talk a little bit about your journey there?
Well, I sort of studied as a hairdresser, did my training. And I started working in the fashion industry, doing a lot of magazines and editorials and things like this. Then went on to do sort of TV commercials. And then I got asked by Ridley Scott to do a movie called Revenge, which a friend of mine was working on with Ridley, and they needed a hairdresser. And I thought I'd see how the experience went. And that was my first intro into the film industry. And then I did another movie called Naked Tango, which was with Leonard Schrader in Argentina, and that's was the first movie I designed the hair for. And then I didn't really do any more movies because I didn't think it was for me because of the time. I guess my age and I had sort of quite a good career in the fashion industry, so I thought I'd keep doing that. And then when I came back to London to live in the 90s, and then I got approached by Stanley Kubrick to do Eyes Wide Shut. And that was my first, I guess, my first meeting with Stanley. And basically that was it, really. And I've been doing it ever since.
So you're credited as a hair designer / stylist for most of the films that you've worked on? And can you... Yeah, and can you explain, outside of the obvious, what your job more thoroughly entails?
Well, hair designing, when you're hair designing, you're designing the look for the whole film, and all the actors and all the characters. And a hair stylist is you're just doing the hair, i.e. as it's requested or as it's scripted or whatever. And sometimes I do personal. So you're just doing one actor. And then I guess, I can't give you much more detailed than that, I think.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is there any sort of understood pathway for hairstylists to get into the movies, or is it like a lot of other departments where it's just all who you know and getting happen to getting a phone call that brings you into the industry sort of out of the blue?
Well, a lot of people sort of study film, hair and makeup, and, especially prosthetics and things like this is a whole different field. A lot of people study, like I said, study hair and makeup and get into this and start off as maybe an assistant on sets, on big productions or whatever, or work in the crowd room, which was one way of getting in. I guess I was sort of lucky. I was taken by sort of quite important people and put into a position. So I guess I went through the side door, so to speak.
Awesome. Yeah, so you talked just briefly a little bit about how Stanley Kubrick called you up, which what was that like? Because he's such a, titan of the industry and stuff.
Well, first of all, I thought, well, I'm not doing a movie. And I thought, but I was interested in meeting Stanley Kubrick.
2001.
Exactly. And so I thought I'd go for the interview anyway, all the way traveling there thinking I'm not doing a movie, I'm not interested, I'm happy what I'm doing. And then 10 minutes into the interview, I'm saying, okay, he's a very persuasive man, and incredibly charming.
So I'm curious what happened, specifically in that interview, but more how I'm curious of how it seems you were ready to drop out of the film industry, and then even though this was Kubrick's last movie, you stuck around for the next 20 years after that,
Exactly.
And so it really revitalized you. I don't know if you could speak on how. Yeah,
it showed a whole different light of filmmaking for me. It was a very small crew, and we knew everybody on the crew, and I worked very closely with a wonderful makeup artist called Robert McCann, who was very supportive, and he's no longer with us. Was very supportive and a very tight-knit set, and Stanley was incredibly encouraging, and it made it feel very comfortable, and we were there for nearly 2 years filming, over a period of 2 years. So I thought I'd probably never work again after that, but here we go.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because it's a famously like one of the longest film shoots of all time, if not the longest. I don't know if that's been broken, but um, what was it? I mean, I guess in retrospect, now that you've worked on other movies that have a more like normal schedule, I guess, was it when you look back on that time? What was it like to spend so much time on a singular film like that?
Well, you go through stages of emotion, I think, on a film set, and all films. You're excited, then you panic. Well, I do. Then I panic because I've got to produce the work. Then you get into it, and it becomes like a normal situation, a normal day, each day on set. And then when it's coming towards the end, you go into panic again because you think, well, you've got to get another job. You might have to never work again. People will probably think you're dead, if you're not around, unavailable. So, but working with Stanley, because it was such a creative thing, and he was very involved in each character, the way they looked and the way they presented themselves. And he was quite personable. And it gave me, and very supportive, obviously.
Can you talk a little bit about designing Tom Cruise's? Well, I guess to lay all the cards on the table, I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan, of his work. So his look in Eyes Wide Shut is very iconic to me. So if you could talk a little bit about designing that and how the process of arriving at that, I guess.
Well, I wanted to sort of look slightly, sleazy is the wrong word, but sort of slightly not quite so clean cut as the Doctor, so to speak. And I put in my head as sort of like a used car salesman. That was my idea, not Stanley's, and I don't think I even discussed that with Stanley. But just the sort of look of someone with a hair looking like that, and to get that was my way of coming to terms with the character. And he's great, Tom, and he was great and very supportive as well.
And were you working on everybody's? You're credited as hair. Yeah. So
Yes.
Could you talk about Nicole Kidman's look as well?
Well, Stanley loved her red curls, and he wanted to see the red curls. He wanted to see all the hair, sort of. And I said to Stanley, I think what's going to happen is you're going to be looking at the hair and not her face. I said, let me just show you one thing. And I got the hair and twisted it up and put a couple of pins in. I said, then you see a beautiful neck, a jaw, and you're looking at her face. You're not looking at the hair. And he said, okay, you've won this one.
How did Kubrick's, famous reputation for doing so many takes affect your job, if at all?
A lot, because shooting through summer, winter, blizzards, whatever, trying to keep the hair. And he'd tease me some days. Some days he'd walk on set and he says, Kerry, Tom looks like Bobby Darin today. and I said, well, Stanley, I can't help the weather, because we'd be outside on location or whatever, and it'd be a bright sunny day, and the shot before we'd done would be sort of like the middle of winter. And so, it was challenging, but it was a good learning curve.
And because it was such a long shoot, were there times was there like when it came time to shoot with the hair and everything, like was it like we have the plan and we're ready to go and we're just going to keep doing this take after take, or were there alterations and changes that you made as you were shooting?
A scene, no. We would sort of pretty much carry on with the way it looked.
Right.
He'd approve the hair before they go on set.
And again, my cruise obsession. Do you have any like fun or interesting stories from the set? in terms of, it seems like it was a very small, intimate. I mean, you said it's a small, intimate crew.
I think, from what I can remember, I think there's only about 26 of us on the whole crew.
Mhm.
You know,
We talked to someone else who worked on Eyes Wide Shut, and I think they described a scene of of Kubrick himself like buttering the cast member or the crew members' toast in the morning, so it felt very intimate.
Possibly. I mean, it was very, he knew everybody. He knew everything, a little bit about everyone on set. He was very personable.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? You've worked with a lot of other amazing filmmakers since then. Have you seen any piece of like what excited you so much about Kubrick in anyone else that you've worked with over the past 20 years?
Well, as directors.
Yeah, as directors.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I've worked with amazing John Woo. I love John Woo.
I was about to ask.
It was great doing Mission Impossible 2 with John. And we were going to do military hair for that. And then I said to him, don't you think long hair would heighten the action with all the motorbike scenes and all the slow-mo and the hair flying around and on cliff tops and things like this, gives a sense of more speed and action than sort of like a Frozen sort of hairdo.
Yes.
So
more romantic.
And sort of sexier in a way.
Well, I'll say.
You know?
Yeah, well, so I guess we have you to thank for the glorious long hair. Trent can, yes, Trent can vouch that I am a huge fan of the hair in MI2.
Okay.
So all props to your work.
Thank you.
What was it like working with John Woo? I mean, he's got a new movie coming out this year too. So,
right, John was fantastic, a very elegant gentleman, sort of like old school, like white shirt, sort of neat trousers. Sort of it's like being on the set of probably in the 60s or something, or probably even the 50s. You know what I imagine would have been like work on the set at that time.
Oh, you talking about the Tom Cruise's long hair in Mission Impossible 2 just got me thinking. Are you always thinking about, in movies that have predecessors, I'm sure it's on your mind of how can I change, how can I change this person's look to change the iconography of the character? Well, just because it's so drastic from Mission Impossible 1 to Mission Impossible 2.
Well, we had leeway because he'd been away, supposedly. He'd been pulled out of retirement. So we had leeway. The hair could be a change. No, I didn't think to change him. It's only when I read the script that I thought, and it was a question of, like, before you do a movie, you request the actors, if they're not working on something, to please leave the hair so you can design free form from there. Sort of both male and female actors.
How do you have any recollections of like telling Tom Cruise that his hair is going to be like 1 million inches long? And like, was that hair difficult to maintain? I can't imagine it was easy.
No, to keep the length, pretty much started sort of trimming it, once every few weeks and keeping the continuity sort of as close as possible. But no, he was cool about it when we discussed it with John, and he was absolutely fine.
Wow, what an interview. I know I say that all the time, but this time I really mean it. Thank you so much to our guest, Kerry Warn, for coming on the show. Yeah, this is part 1. In the next part, we talk about some more movies he worked on and just, get into what he's been working on recently. He was a very soft-spoken guy, very humble in the way he talked, and I think we can all agree, a wonderful guest. And we're going to have him on next week. As always, you can check us out on all of our social media, which is to say Instagram and Twitter. And we always update and post whenever a new episode is out. We're sorry about the sort of haphazard release schedules of the last few weeks. It's been a tough time. I'm busy all the time and struggling to meet deadlines constantly. My life has truly turned into Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2. I'm just sort of a source of constant disappointment from my friends, my family, and now to you, the listener. Not to make this all dark. I don't really know where this is all coming from. Probably because it's 12:15 a.m. But no, I'm mostly joking. But I am very, very busy. I do this. I do our good friend Adam Volrich's podcast, Eye of the Duck. I have my own movie I'm working on. I'm working on another movie. It's a busy time. It's been a busy time for me. But this podcast is a saving grace for me because it's so fun to do, and I love the interviews, and I love the guests, and I love you, humble listener. Wow. Really just sort of allowing the listener to be my therapist. Anyways, you can check us out next week. We're on all podcasting platforms. Please leave us a rating and review. Other than that, check us out next week. Bye, guys.